what about this dramatic entry, Mr. Nader?
This is like a classic act.
Yeah, it's like a suspense, you know, who's going to be sitting there, who's next, who's coming to Yonkers Voice? Well, guys, it's Mr. Nader, Assemblyman Nader Sayegh. Congratulations for yesterday's event. It was a wonderful event, lots of people there, all fun, all positive. We wish we would have more stuff like that.
Well, that's the beauty of Yonkers. You know, we're a very diversified city. I grew up in Yonkers practically all my life, and really came to appreciate the differences in cultures and traditions and ethnic groups. And when you celebrate and you sample the food and the dance and the music, and you understand, you really learn to appreciate people, and you understand that people have a lot of commonality, and that commonality is greater than the difference.
Now, Mr. Nader, how many years Jordan is independent?
77. Yesterday we celebrated well, actually today is Independence Day, but we arranged because, you know, a couple of weeks ago I issued again and got a resolution recognizing Jordan's 77th independence, and also celebrating Jordanian American heritage and culture. So we had the resolutions, and the resolutions will be presented to the mayor at City Hall, to the Jordan ambassador in Washington, D.C., the Consul General, and basically it's a way of respecting the contributions of an ethnic group. I've gotten involved with many other flag raising ceremonies at different ethnicities, and it's always a joy, it's always a pleasure. And Jordanians, you know, especially to Yonkers, and my family came in the mid-50s, and the immigration continued into the 60s and 70s. And thank God, you know, they started out like any other ethnic groups, working in restaurants and working in delis and, you know, Stuart Stampin and Adventures Inn, the old Adventures Inn. And they educated their kids that are today, you'll find them in hospitals and schools and classrooms, and, you know, so you love to see. And when I talk to the other ethnic groups that are now coming to Yonkers, we say to them, hey, it's not a secret, you know, family traditions, respect who you are, your values, your culture, and that's what makes America great. Years ago, they used to call America the melting pot, right? When people came together. But then we realized, and I started pushing the concept, we're not really a melting pot, because America consists of so many different people that bring their values and their cultures. So America is really a salad bowl, where every ethnicity that comes in, you know, keeps its flavor, its tradition, it's the way it brings to the table.
So, Mr. Nader, you are a living example, not just you, your family, and many other Jordanians, and I'm sure Portuguese, Africans, people from everywhere in the world. An example of the American dream.
That's right.
You came here without nothing or much, through hard work and principle, because I'm sure that your parents understood that education was key.
That's it. Education was your key to a better life.
But another thing that you understand, people that are immigrants, like myself, you and others, is that we understand the complexity of immigrating to the United States. There is not a single immigrant that walks through the border, legally or illegally, that does not say, I wish I could come to the United States legally. Okay. They don't understand the concept. People here in America don't understand the complexity and what it takes to go to an embassy and ask to come to the United States. It's much more than just walk in and ask.
Oh, it's very difficult, and there's a long waiting period, and sometimes, you know, depending what country you're coming from and your background or your financial resources, sometimes it's an easier path, and sometimes it becomes very difficult and very frustrating. And of course, all over the world, America is a land of freedom, and it's a land where you make your dreams come true. We know it's not that easy and it's difficult, but in any event, that's what the dream is, and that's what people have. You know, when it comes to immigration and it comes to asylum seekers that, you know, we're witnessing all over the news today in the last number of months and years, is, you know, this whole concept of open borders. And many immigrants that I talk to, you know, support the concept of, you know, this is a land of immigrants that grow and make this country great and give it its identity, but that there should be, to some extent, some uniformity. Many of the immigrants that came when we came felt they went through a process, that there was safeguards as far as making sure people were healthy, making sure that we let in our country the right individuals that, God forbid, were not criminals or were not to cause harm. Now with open borders, you know, biggest concern is, as much as we are compassionate, and especially here in the city of Yonkers, we're a diversified, ethnically diversified community that welcomes immigration, and we value the hard work of immigrants. And they usually take on the jobs that many established individuals won't take, to work in restaurants and services and so forth. So we need that type of workforce. There's really a demand for it. But, you know, the hope is that there's a little bit more safety, a little bit more security, you know, implants that would check to see, to make sure that someone with a violent history is not being allowed. Recently, we had an issue with a fella that killed 5 people, if you recall, 2 months ago, and he was deported already 4 times, but it was so easy for him to come into the border and cross over and committed the crime. So, to a large extent, you know, we believe in compassion, we believe in, you know, because many of these individuals, supermajority, are decent, hard-working people that really want to establish their dream in America. But we got to make sure that we secure the borders. We got to make sure that there's a plan in place, so when the federal government or the state sends 100 families to Yonkers or to Rockland or elsewhere, what's the follow-up plan? Because we know, involved in government and education and healthcare, that it costs. There's an after cost of making sure you have to educate now children of 100 families. You got to provide health care, you got to provide housing and other services. So my hope is that we focus on the big picture. We focus on making sure we show the compassion and support these asylum seekers need, but we got to at the same time make sure we secure ourselves by making sure that we're not letting in criminals.
You know, Mr. Nader, I don't know if it's a secret to you, but I don't think it's a secret to anyone that I'm a liberal. I'm as liberal as liberals come.
Correct.
But I have never met another liberal or Democrat that ever said that they think that the border should be wide open, let whoever wants to come in,
Correct.
no check and balances, regardless of what they did out there, just let them in. I have never heard such a thing.
You're right.
That's what Republicans want people to believe, but that is not the case.
I agree.
Okay, we all know that the borders need to be secure. We all need that those that are coming into the country need to be vetted, they need to be checked. Safety of Americans is of the utmost concern. All those things need to be done. But we also think that immigration laws and complexities needs to be changed in order to allow those people to apply to come into the United States. Right now, if you're not fully loaded with money, or if you don't have a father and you're underage and meet certain conditions, you cannot come to the United States. And the United States is the country that goes out there saying that we are the land of the free, we are this, we are that. So we entice these people to come and seek the things that we advertise out there.
Yeah.
and then we complain when they come to our country.
Sure.
We should be proud that so many people are coming and seeking help in the United States versus other countries. But Mr. Nader, before we go further, I have to give a shout out to the best Mexican restaurant in Yonkers County, New York State, and perhaps the world, including Jordan.
Well, you know, Dos Marias or Taco Poblamos, you know, we've been here for many years, and it started out as a small little shack, which is still out there.
Still out there.
And you know, my family, we've had family members that studied medicine in Guadalajara, Mexico, right? So we always appreciated Mexican culture and cuisine and music, and I got to tell you, I found very few places that especially have tacos that are as delicious as here. And to see Alfonso Alvarez and his staff expand the business to Dos Marias, and we've had events here and we've had many occasions. It's really not only terrific cuisine, but Mr. Alvarez and his staff are outstanding, you know, great host and someone who really is a part of our city, our business establishment, and I encourage us. We're here at Dos Marias because we want to encourage and motivate them.
So guys, support your local business. Actions, not words. Many of us sit down, we talk, we're going to support local businesses. But there is a big difference between saying it and actually doing it.
Correct.
So come on down here. They have Taco Tuesdays every Tuesday.
Yeah.
They have karaoke Wednesday to Sunday.
Wow.
Okay. Thursday nights, this place is unbelievable. If you have room for one more friend, Mr. Nader, Nader, I'm sorry, Mr. Nader, this is the place to come.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a place where everyone feels welcome.
Of course.
Okay, come and make a new friend. Okay,
That's right.
Don't matter who you are, there is always room for another friend. This is the place to do it. Now let's go back to your work.
Okay.
I know that you've been very busy in Albany for the last few weeks.
Very busy.
Doing the people's work. But people are asking, what is he doing? What people's work? We want to know, what have you done?
Sure.
What have you accomplished, sir?
Of course. Albany has been a busy session, you know, and we had about a month delay in passing the budget, and that was largely due to what I consider policy issues. When it came to money, the state budget was $232 billion. So in my opinion, money wasn't even the issue. What was on the minds of many people across the state was really two main issues: crime, people that demanded changes to bail reform, people that felt that no matter what people talk about, the data states and the data, it's what's out there. It's perception, it's what the media looks at, and the perception is that crime is on the rise, that people are being assaulted on subways, people don't feel safe in their streets. I even did a survey through my assembly office to basically reach out and tell my constituents, what's on your mind? Do you feel safe in Yonkers? And to a large extent, people, even though in Yonkers might have felt to some extent safe, very concerned. 2/3 or more were concerned that crime needs to be curtailed. And the way they felt was to give judges more discretion when it came to bail reform, which is a good concept, but that judges need to have the power that if somebody's a repeat offender and comes before the court, even if it's, you know, a felony, that there should be bail, for example, that felons shouldn't be left out, especially people that are assaulting people or harming people. More important, the way the law was, that if you shoplifted, that was considered a minor crime and the judges can't put bail on you. But then what if you have what we have now, these enterprises of criminals that are repeat shoplifters, where they go in as gangs and they rob continuously, repeatedly, and they're left out of jail. So the new legislation gives the judges more authority to say if somebody is a felon, a serious crime committer, or a repeat offender, even though the initial crime like shoplifting was considered minor, but if you're shoplifting repeatedly and you're stealing repeatedly, then bail should be issued, right? So things like that, we changed the policy on housing. We put together initiatives that told the governor that although we want more affordable housing, we wanted to restrict or not to allow the government to override local zoning. That would have destroyed a lot of local neighborhoods. So these are initiatives that I fought hard for, that we were able at the end of the day, once the budget was approved, to say to my constituents and to Yonkers, hey, we delivered. When it came to the overall budget and the impact on Yonkers, we fought hard for Yonkers. I'm a Yonkers guy. My concern as an educator, make sure you fund education. Out of the $232 billion, we were able to bring in $14 million extra in aid for the Yonkers Public Schools through the funding process. We also, working with the delegation, got an extra $12 billion, what they call bullet aid, even though they call it one-shot deal, plus the $19.6 million that we get from MGM, from Empire Casino, on an annual basis. So I gotta say, education, we address the concerns. The city of Yonkers, the Soymal River Valley, over $8 million to improve that whole sawmill development and safety and security. The increase in aid to Ames, aid to municipalities, so people are seeing more streets are being paved. Hospitals got an increase in funding, nursing homes got an increase in funding, many after-school programs, mental illness programs, community-based agencies from all walks of life, ethnic groups, Office of the Agent, groups that provide educational and other economic development, we provide it for Yonkers. That's what I do. I go there, I work hard. An assembly position really is a combination of constituent services in our city, in my case in Yonkers, and also in Albany with legislation. Very few people are active with legislation like I am. I'm an educator, I'm an attorney, I understand the law, I understand how to interpret it, and I communicate. So there's been many, many legislative pieces that I, as an assemblyman from Yonkers, proposed, passed nearly unanimously in many cases by the entire assembly. And these are legislative pieces that not only impact Yonkers, impact the entire state. Just this week, I passed legislation where, telephone companies or utility companies that, for example, give these untraceable numbers, where people can get these telephone numbers that law enforcement can't even trace, and they harass and intimidate and bully and insult people and cause harm and emotional distress. When people used to complain, the law enforcement would say, hey, the numbers are untraceable. They call them spoof phones, right? Mm-hmm. That we can't trace them. My legislation, and that's because people were complaining about this thing going on that nobody can control or understand. I did legislation that just passed, right, that requires these companies that give these fake numbers, untraceable numbers, to have backup documentation, so that in the event there's an illegality, there's a harm caused, that law enforcement has the right to go in and find out who's causing this intimidation and this harm. This was a Sayegh-sponsored bill. Also, utility companies.
Before we go to the next step, let's stick around just a little longer on that one.
Yeah.
Mr. Nader, is it time to pass a bill that will protect residents from people that might use their social platform to harass, intimidate, extort, blackmail other individuals? Because there is people that they call themselves journalists, but they don't report stories, they become the story very
Correct.
often. And we need some type of legislation that will address those people that the only goal is to arrest others. I have been a victim of it. I know many others that have been a victim of it.
Sure.
And we need some type of law that will protect people from those who want to use electronic digital devices with the only purpose of arresting people.
Correct.
So why nothing has been done yet? Or has it been done?
No, you know, the untraceable numbers is a step in the right direction, and I agree with you. Journalism and media, the intent you would hope is that they report what is reportable, what is legitimate, what is factual, what is documented. And very often it's possible that sometimes, whether major networks or podcasts or whomever, that sometimes people are misguided and sometimes they're misled, and the information disseminated is not always on target. But I agree with you, very often when you feel that the information is intentionally to harm and disarm and defame, that's really, it crosses the border of journalism and somebody's protection under public image and public rights. I think that, you know, policy should be initiated. Policy that when a journalist or in any form media intentionally starts or attempts to deform or defame an individual's character or reputation, whether it's for political reason or personal reason, then there should be conditions, there should be criteria that holds the individual responsible and accountable. And I agree with you. I think too often, as much as we want information to be free, we want the news to be such where the public is aware. You and I have always advocated the importance of the public being aware. But when information to a large extent is intentional when it comes to trying to defame someone, that's criminal and that's illegal, and there should be legislation. And I have no problem looking at legislation that holds journalists and anyone involved with the dissemination of information to a standard where, to a large extent, you gotta believe and you gotta have a positive motive and intent to disseminate credible and factual information. And if that's not the case, and there's a pattern of harassing individuals and looking to defame them, then that should be a criminal act.
So, Mr. Nader, maybe it's something that you need to work on.
Definitely.
And see if you can pass a law. Because look, social media has been the motive for many young folks to take their own lives. Because I'm an adult, I know how to handle it. I know how to deal with those situations.
Sure.
But there is people that they have no borders. They don't care who they're arresting, who they're attacking. They can be attacking a 7-year-old because he said something to my daughter in a bus. Okay,
Right.
That 7-year-old might not know or have the tools necessary to deal with that situation, and the outcome could be bad.
Could be fatal.
Could be fatal.
Yes.
So we need actions, not words, sir.
Actions, and I believe in actions, and you know, the many pieces of legislation that I've supported and lobbied for and we passed that are now laws impacting all of us in New York are as a result of communications like you and I are having, where somebody would tell me, well, I had a gift card that, you know, I paid for and then I didn't realize it's in my kitchen drawer and it expired. And I said, well, you know, that doesn't make sense. If you paid for that gift card and you paid for it, why should it expire? Now you have laws in New York because of my bills where they don't expire. So that change took place as a result of somebody telling you, my gift card expired and I paid for it and why should it expire? Utility companies, when we had the storms and people were complaining that it took days sometimes and weeks, you know, to get power restored, I took the lead. Nearly 5 pieces of legislation that were passed that holds utility companies responsible to make sure that within a certain time, in many cases 24 hours or 36 hours, that power is restored. I made sure with legislation that if somebody has a health condition and requires electricity or a ventilated machine or other type of medical necessities, that they're given top priority. I made sure that there's legislation that when there's power outages, that there's an immediate attempt by utility companies to restore power to police companies, to hospitals, to ambulances, EMS. I mean, it's people say, well, that made sense, but it wasn't a policy. And utility companies often. The other one this week that just passed, right? There's a policy in place that the emergency management systems they have when there's a power outage, they have to give notice to Con Ed that there's an outage and there's a down wire or an emergency, and Con Ed has 36 hours. But if you made a call before, they'll say, no, it doesn't count. We're not going to start counting the hours if you can get a hold of them. Under my policy, not only the emergency management, if you as an individual, as a homeowner, as a person, had a downed wire, had a problem, and you called the utility company, the 36 hours starts immediately ticking. So it gives a little bit more credibility to homeowners and citizens in general.
But you know, Mr. Nader, we could have all the policies to protect the citizens of Yonkers or any place else. But the policy alone, without an execution process, does not go far. Let's say somebody on southeast Yonkers, on a ventilator, lost power, cannot call, or has a difficulty reaching a number, because you know how these numbers go. You call, it's a machine that answers, press here, press that, time is clicking.
Sure.
Those minutes are precious to that person that cannot breathe.
Time is of the essence.
Exactly. So what is the process? Yes, let's say your bill passes, but how does that help that poor 85-year-old woman that is in her room on South Yonkers?
Sure.
How is she going to reach? Can she reach somebody?
Well, you know, you're right. There's many individuals that need support and a mechanism behind them, whether family or sometimes they have workers, aides, and nurse aides that accompany them and help them. Our policy is such where, you know, we disseminate every week when we have our newsletter. You know, we're always giving information out. You're right, not everybody reads a newsletter, not everybody is familiar and aware, so it's multiple layers, you know, but the more proactive we are, you know, and the more you try to educate and reach to as many people as possible, the better. You know, does it always work? It's very difficult to say any one system, whether policy or standard, always works. Our goal is to continue to say, hey, how can we improve it? You know, we spoke about bail reform. It was a good system, but there was some wrinkles to it, and we needed to fine-tune it. With your circumstances and the situation you brought up, it's true. You know, so we go out of our way to make sure that not only individuals are able to have access to phone numbers and information, but individuals that are either old or disabled, you know, continue to have the funding and the support so they can have special aids and support individuals that help them and monitor. So if one issue doesn't address, you address it by another means.
So perhaps your office can send me a flyer, you know, with emergency numbers, because, you know, Yonkers Voice has a very huge follower.
That would be great.
Okay? And I can put it, a flyer up in case of an emergency, power outage, whatever. These are the numbers to call. So people can print it out, put on the refrigerator, and if something happens, call that number. But please don't give us a number that you have to call, then it's a click 1 for this, click 2 for Spanish, because time is of essence.
Sure.
No, time is of essence.
All right.
What are the bills are you working on based on priority, things that you feel it's most important and the people need to know?
You know, for me as an educator, I believe, you know, that education should be funded in an equitable manner. And as a former president of the school board, as a principal for many years, I was always upset that Yonkers was always shortchanged and continues to be shortchanged because the funding formula the state has that determines how much money they give each city or municipality to educate students is based on largely the wealth of the county you live in. So I always say Yonkers, you know, we're a public school system that's 75%, you know, students of color. We're 75% families that are on free or reduced lunch. You know, so I consider our population really a disadvantaged, economically disadvantaged population. However, because we're part of Westchester County, that is considered one of the richest counties in the country, right? We get half the funding from the state for our kids than communities that are similar, like in Buffalo and Rochester and Syracuse. To me, that's totally unfair. I sponsored legislation that encourages and states that criteria's got to change. Like a school district, you got to look at the percentage of special ed kids, percentage of English language learners, the enrollment numbers. You got to look at the wealth, of course, of a community, and more important, the percentage of free and reduced lunch. That's all Sayegh-sponsored bills. We look at our school system, our buildings are decaying. We have a shortage of 5,000 seats in the Yonkers schools, right? But we can't build, even though when I was board president, we wanted to build 3 schools. If we had to pay, you know, $300 million for each school from the Yonkers budget, because we're getting a reimbursement that's not like Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse, we're limited to how many schools we can build. So we had only the resources to build 1 school that's going up now, the Sotomayor School, right, on McLean Avenue. And this funding process, through legislation, would assure that it's modified so we're more equitable. I have a legislative piece that would encourage grow your own initiative. We all believe, whether it's in police or fire or in education, that the faces of teachers and administrators should reflect the constituents, or in this case, the students you serve. So this legislative piece, that's my legislation, that's going to impact the entire state, is supporting a Grow Your Own initiative. It's part of the TEACH Act, where communities are encouraged to follow standards that allow for more hiring and more training and more opportunities from high schools to begin to instill in many young people of color that, hey, teaching is a great career. We have a shortage in nursing and teaching. In law enforcement, we've seen the rise where now law enforcement departments are more diversified in their hiring. Why is that beneficial? Because when you work in a community and the community looks at the faces and looks at the ethnicities and they see that it best reflects who they are, in my opinion, there's more of a collaborative respect for that profession. And teaching is no different.
Now, you might not know this, even though you talk with lots of people, but I think I talk to more people, Mr. Sayegh. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, I'm talking about in a positive way, because I'm out there talking to people all the time.
You are.
I remember I met you, could be 25, 30 years ago, give or take.
Yes.
Okay. You were the principal.
School 13.
School 13, where I first met you. I have met many kids that were in that school when you were principal. Those kids are today doctors, some of them, attorneys,
Sure.
and they speak very highly of you. Okay, and they say that you are one of the pillars for their success, for who they became today. That said, I also know that you are the president of the public schools
School board?
school board.
Sure, yeah, that was fun.
We also had a survey on Yonkers Voice because everybody knows there is a vacancy coming up.
Sure.
Okay? And we asked who was the person that the people of Yonkers feels and thinks should be in that place. Your name came up. Your name came up. Not just because you are a great educator, but also because you are an educator at heart. Because there is people that are educators, but they are not educators at heart.
Correct.
Yeah, there is two different type of educators. Some see that you do that with love and compassion. This is who you are. Okay? Is that in a position, sir, that you would be interested in, or would you shut it down if offered to you?
You know, education has always been my passion. You know, I served as a principal for 30 years. I'm a product of the Yonkers public school system, you know, from kindergarten to graduation from Yonkers High School. My first job was a substitute teacher in the Yonkers schools and became a math and social studies teacher. As I said, when you serve 30 years as a principal, even though I'm an attorney also, you know, but to me, that was out of passion. And my style, my upbringing was, you know, as an immigrant myself, worked very hard, shined shoes down in Getty Square and by the waterfront.
Is that just a story, or
no,
that really
it's
happened?
true, yeah, to pay my school lunch. I mean, family of 8 kids, my father passed away as a young man, and you know, we grew up as a family unit where everybody worked hard, we valued education. You know, all my brothers became medical doctors, and I was the attorney, the education guy. And for me, I respected diversity. As a principal of School 13 and other schools during 30 years, always promoted pride in the school. Even before after-school programs became popular, we had after-school programs, Saturday Academy, morning instruction. So anybody that needed that extra help was given that extra. Parents always felt welcome. Students were motivated. And that was the passion of seeing positive change, seeing growth. And you know, having said that, many individuals, although I love being a state assemblyman and the work I do on behalf of Yonkers, education is crucial for me. Honestly, so many people reached out and said, you should apply, you should apply. And I didn't want that opportunity to pass, so I submitted my application.
You did?
I did. Well, I submitted my application, and we'll take it from there. You know, I feel that my skills, my qualifications, there isn't a role in education, from substitute teacher to a teacher, principal, central office, to my role as not only a trustee, a president of the school board, and also president of the Big Five school boards. And I taught college. So when people talk to me about education, from pre-K to higher education and graduate, and you know, I feel you know, aware and qualified. The opportunity comes, it would be a pleasure.
Well, I'll tell you what, you know, Dr. Quesada is going into a different, path.
Sure.
We wish him the best. We thank him for the work that is done. But the new person is coming in. I hope it's you. And I hope that our next sit down will be me interviewing you as the superintendent of the Yonkers Public Schools. Who knows? I know that the people is behind you. The people support you, because I spoke with them. They have commented and they said that we could not have a better superintendent than Nader Sayegh. So hopefully we'll see him. Please comment on this thread. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you support Mr. Sayegh for the superintendent of Yonkers Public Schools, and other issues that maybe you want to bring it up that we had no time to address, because you know, this is half an hour. We have another interview coming up. Stay tuned, don't go away. But leave your comments, reach out to Mr. Sayegh with any questions that you have. He's a very reachable person, and I'm sure that he's working on much more stuff that we had no time to address today, but we promise that next time we will address it. Mr. Nader, thank you always, sir.
Bro, pleasure's mine, and you know, we always hope and wish for good things and progress in Yonkers, and whatever way, whatever course life takes us, we stay positive and do our very best.
Good. So again, guys, Yonkers Voice is not my voice. Yonkers Voice is the platform where your voice is amplified, where we can talk about the things that really matters. Not the nonsense, not the baloney, things that matters, things that we feel is important to you and to the city. We might not be able to please everybody, but that's life. You know, we can never please everybody. I gave up on trying.
Well, you gotta stay positive, and the
That's
glass
it.
is half full, have a good positive attitude, and always strive to do the best, you know, and always understand whether there's bumps in the road, as long as you're always looking up.
That's it, guys. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next interview that is coming up in about 5 to 10 minutes. Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.